All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking Must Add Week 7 video presented by FanDuel Canada. And even through a different country, William Nylander's point streak lives on 17 games now after logging 5 points in the 2 games in his home country of Sweden. Obviously great performance by Nylander. Probably one of the better, if not playing the best hockey in the NHL right now of any players. Looking at the live odds at FanDuel and how this point streak is kind of played out and where you can kind of still wager if you want. For it to end with no point in his next game, which would be against the Chicago Blackhawks on Friday, it would end right now at plus 200, 2-1. The longest odds on the board right now are for it to finish at 23 games. That would be right before the Leafs' all-time record of 24 plus games of having a point. That's at plus 2,000, which means it would end on December 7th against the Ottawa Senators. Looking at last week's must-add, just recapping some of the players, not the greatest for some of the guys we gave out last week. Pavel Mintyukov on the Anaheim Ducks, 0 points, 5 shots on goal in their slew of games last week. Barbashev, just 1 point playing on that top line. Figured they had some pretty decent matchups, but got shut out in 2 of those games. So weird for what this Vegas offense is giving off right now. Creating a lot of offense, just not being able to bury in some of these games. Nick Paul, just 1 point, just one assist in last week, 2 shots on goal. So obviously his role in the power play needs to be solidified to really have him be fantasy hockey relevant at this point. Pyotr Kochetkov, he only played 1 game last week, didn't have the greatest start, but the Flyers have been a really scrappy team so far this year. So I wouldn't worry too much if you're still picking him up thinking that he's going to be a guy you're going to be able to play. I think he will continue to be that as him and Ranta kind of go back and forth with Freddie Anderson on the shelf. Alex Iafallo, just 1 point. This Winnipeg team, it seems like it's going to be kind of a cast of characters of who's going to be getting the points that week. Iafallo, had 8 points in his last 5 games before this, and then this week just putting up 1 point in 3 games. So it seems like Ehlers is getting back in the mix a lot. So if he's still available on your waiver wire, maybe he's the guy to pick up this week. And then the last guy, Torrey Krug, honestly, a guy who's 4% rostered last week and is starting to become much more involved in this offense. He had 2 points last week in their slew of games, 11 shots on goal. So creating a decent amount of offense there. If Krug is still available on your waiver wire, it seems like he's going to be a guy moving forward you can rely on. So I'd look at him. The team's playing 4 games this week. You have Boston, Calgary, Colorado, Edmonton, Nashville, New York Rangers, the San Jose Sharks, and the Vancouver Canucks. Let's get into these 7 must-add players for Week 7. All right, so the first guy we're going to be looking to pick up, pretty highly rostered, but if he's available, he is the best add you can get this week, considering the Colorado Avalanche play 4 games, and that's Valeri Nichuskin. Has that left wing and right wing capability as well. So this guy could be very useful this week. Last week was tied second in the NHL in high danger chances for playing just 3 games. He created 10 on his own there. So it's relatively simple, though, because he's now playing on the first line with Mikko Rantanen and Nathan MacKinnon. His last 3 games played, he has 4 goals and 1 assist. So playing on that first power play unit as well. Last week, top 15 in expected goals for across the league, too. So obviously playing a really solid brand of hockey right now. And with Artturi Lehkonen out right now, that certainly helps them because the 2 other wingers that they have to rely on Colorado will be Jonathan Drouin and Thomas Tatar, that second line, who are playing with Ryan Johansson. So the lack of depth for Colorado certainly helps Valeri Nichuskin, as he's going to be playing in every top profile offensive style for this Colorado team. All right, so the next guy we're adding this week, and I know, take a minute before I say this guy's name, but if this is the week to rely on Jonathan Huberdeau, I know it's crazy to say after he's been benched and all these different scenarios going on in Calgary, but last week got moved onto a different line. Seems like he's starting to play a little bit better. Last week he had 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists. Led the team in expected goals for over the last 4 games as well, which is obviously very encouraging, along with 5 high danger chances for there. The main reason why you want to pick him up this week, the Flames play 4 games, and these are all 4 teams that Huberdeau has played really well against across his career. Seattle, obviously not huge sample size, but 6 career games against the Kraken, he has 2 goals, 3 assists, so almost a point per game there. Against Nashville, he's over a point per game, 27 games played against the Predators over his career, 14 goals and 15 assists. The Stars as well, they play on Friday or Saturday, and he has 30 points in 25 career games there. And then Colorado, probably one of the worst matchups, I would say, out of these 3 teams, going defensively and just with his historical stats against the team. He has just 6 goals and 11 points in 16 games played, but still pretty solid sample size against pretty much all of those teams there. And I think the line he's on now too will really set him up more for success here. This was a line last year that I thought had a lot of success, playing with Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman now. He never really was paired up with them last year when Daryl Sutter was a coach, but Ryan Huska seems like he's just finding pretty much any scenario to try to get Jonathan Huberdeau going here. I think these two players complement him really well because you obviously have Blake Coleman, a guy who's going to be in the corners, getting pucks out of the corners, looking for Jonathan Huberdeau, and then Backlund is a guy that shoots a ton. So if Huberdeau can find Backlund for some shots in the slot, could turn into points for pretty much this entire one. All right, another guy who's having a little bit of a breakout start to the year this year, and that's Alexis Lafreniere in the New York Rangers. 39% rostered, has that ability to play the left wing and right wing spot in Yahoo League, so obviously really important there. On the season, has 11 points, but his last 3 games, he has 5 points, and his last 5 games played, he has 7 points there. He's tied on the team in goals, I believe, or second on the team in goals, behind Artemi Panarin with 7 goals on the season so far. And this new line that he's been put on, Laviolette moving him onto the second line with Vincent Trocheck and Artemi Panarin, a perfect scenario for Lafreniere. I think these are two players as well, like I mentioned with John Huberdeau, that just really complement Lafreniere well, and it's starting to prove that, as you can see his recency in points as well. Panarin has been an absolute force this year for this Rangers team. He leads the team in points and goals with 26 points and 10 goals. And then Trocheck is just an absolute dog at center. We've talked about him before. He's one of the best face-off guys in the NHL right now. And the Rangers have 4 games this week, so that's why Lafreniere is even more valuable. They play the Stars, the Penguins, who's a pretty good matchup there, Flyers, and then the Bruins. So not the greatest matchups, with the volume there I think is good enough. The Rangers are still going to find ways to score goals against these solid teams as they continue to be a top team in the Metro. All right, so another guy that's playing 4 games this week that we're going to want to pick up is Charlie Coyle on the Boston Bruins. 19% rostered, through 16 games played this year, has 14 points, 5 goals to go along with that number there. Pretty high shooting percentage, but I think I think we're starting to see the Bruins kind of find other ways to score other than just through David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand. And I think this second line of Charlie Coyle, James Van Riemsdyk, and Trent Frederick is not an easy line to play against. And I think we're starting to see some correlation to them in the offensive production and side of things. If you look at the last few games for Charlie Coyle, 3 goals, 6 points his last 4 games played, leads the team in goals over that span, and is second in expected goals for over that stretch as well. So he's playing really well. 4 games this week as well, as I mentioned: Tampa, Florida, Detroit, and then the New York Rangers to finish off the week. He plays in every scenario right now: second line center, second power play, and then second penalty kill. If you had to pick a better option on this team, I'd probably go with Zacha, just because he plays on the first line, first power play, and first penalty kill. But there's a reason why he's 60% rostered and Charlie Coyle is only 19% rostered. Coyle's still playing a ton of minutes, so if you can't get Zacha, I think Coyle is definitely a great option if you need a center to stream this week. All right, so now we're going to be looking at guys that are less than 5% rostered right now that we're going to be picking up. I have 3 guys on this list, 2 of them being defensemen. This first one, Sam Girard on the Colorado Avalanche, a guy last year and in fantasy hockey that has been very relevant in years. So to see him this low rostered is quite surprising. I know he was dealing with some injuries at the beginning of the year, but now is fully back in the lineup. And I think he's starting to play a really solid brand of hockey, especially on the offensive side of things. Last week he was 9th in expected goals for amongst defensemen. That's a pretty high number and some good company to be a part of there. 5-on-5 play as well. This is a really interesting number from last week for this Colorado team. Created the 4th amount of offense on the team last week in 5-on-5 situations. These defensemen on Colorado, it's like no other team really in the NHL. They're maybe Carolina, but they're even more involved in the offense than the Carolina Hurricanes defensemen there. They have 3 defensemen on their second power play, and the numbers show that in terms of how many points these defensemen have produced over the last few years. I think it's something Jared Bednar focuses on, because I think this Colorado Avalanche team, when you're looking at their forwards, they lack depth and a certain amount of skill, and their defensemen certainly do not in that sense. So you look at their last 3 games played, he has the same number of 5-on-5 points as Mikko Rantanen and has a higher expected goals for number than Nathan MacKinnon. So if the offense starts to click, Girard will be someone getting points in that scenario, and I think this is a great week for this Colorado Avalanche offense to start going, because the matchups that they have are relatively easy. They play Nashville, Vancouver, obviously Vancouver playing really well right now, but then Minnesota and Calgary. Minnesota still has yet to figure out goaltending certainly struggling right now. And then Calgary, you never really know what you're going to get, but when they play against these much better teams, they tend to fold a little bit. So Sam Girard, if you need a defenseman this week, this is definitely a guy I'd be looking at if you're in a points league as well, because that's pretty much what you're going to rely on when you pick up Sam Girard. All right, so the next guy, probably the best, I would say, super sleeper or streamer for this week, considering the new scenario that this guy is in and how low he's rostered. Just 2% rostered. That's Gustav Nyquist on the Nashville Predators. Has that left wing spot right now and is now on the first line with Philip Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly. Huso Parssinen started out as the other winger on this first line. Doesn't seem like it was working out. They brought up a little bit more of a veteran presence, and it seems like this is the direction Andrew Burnett's going to be going moving forward here with Nyquist on that first line. If you look at their last week with the new line, Nyquist, 2 games played, had 2 points, 1 goal and 1 assist. So that's definitely enough production to keep him on that first line. He's also now on the first power play line as well. This is a guy I talked about at the beginning of the season that could have potential breakout or the ability to be a sleeper in fantasy hockey if he was put in the right scenarios, and it seems like he's starting to be put in the right scenarios now. Plays 4 games this week as well. Plays Colorado, Calgary, St. Louis, and Winnipeg. So some good matchups to take advantage of there. If you're in need of a left winger to stream this week, and even a guy that could be on your team moving forward, if he stays in this role and his minutes on the ice continue to go up, I think Nyquist is a great option. All right, so another defenseman we're going to be looking to pick up this week is Cam York on the Philadelphia Flyers. Another guy who's 2% rostered right now, but if you look at his most recent stats, definitely a lot really encouraging, especially if you look at his ice time. Like, he's averaging throughout his 18 games played so far this year, 22 minutes per game on the ice. That's very high, and it makes sense because he's playing on the top pair with Travis Sanheim, a guy who's also having a breakout year right now. Is the clear and away the best defenseman on this Philadelphia Flyers roster right now. You look at last week, he led all defensemen last week in expected goals for. Cam York did. That's a really solid number to have there and really good company to be a part of. And he showed it on the stat sheet as well. He had 1 goal, 1 assist in 3 games played, along with 7 shots on goal as well. So some decent numbers there and very consistent across the board. Seems like he's really starting to get a lot more confidence with his offensive game for this Flyers team. And this week they play the Islanders twice. That's a really good matchup pretty much for any fantasy hockey player, considering they give up a ton of shots and a lot of scoring chances, even to defensemen as well. And then they also play the Rangers. So 3 games played this week. If you had to pick between Girard and York for this week only, I'd probably pick Girard just because he plays 1 more game. But York could be a guy moving forward that you could pick up and kind of keep on your roster. He's played the 3rd most minutes out of anyone on this team over the last 4 games played. If you need like lightning in a bottle kind of offense from a defenseman, Cam York is definitely your guy. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of this week's must-add for Week 7 of the fantasy hockey season. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, download the FanDuel Canada app, and continue to bet on Willie Nylander until this point streak is done. And I'll see you guys in the next video.